I've spent a couple of evenings getting the carburetors back on, the lines hooked up for the choke and the throttle, and now some fuel line, and we're just going to see whether this actually runs. I got some braided line just for a little bit of additional abrasion resistance because these things do actually vibrate. Got the fuel line from the petcock to the carburetor, got the carburetors back on, and then this line goes around the back now. It's supposed to go through this hole, but I don't want to take that case off. I'm not quite sure how that works. I just want to see whether it runs because, remember, I don't know if this bike runs, whether there's a rod knocking, whether the transmission functions, anything. So my goal today is just to get it started and see what we have. So now let's see if it runs. I'm going to turn the key on, open both petcocks. We're just going to give those just a couple seconds to make sure that the fuel is running down into the bowls. Flip it to run, make sure it's in neutral, pull the clutch, engage the choke. So now that the bike runs, we've got quite a few adjustments to make. First of all, we're going to use our idle speed set screw here on each carburetor. This one's here to adjust the relative idle between each cylinder. Then we're going to adjust the mixture screw. And if you remember, these were turned out barely half a turn. On most carburetors that I've dealt with, it needs to be almost a full turn, so that's where I set them. But what we're going to do is start the bike, and then we're going to turn the screw in and out and listen for the idle speed to go up and down. What we're looking for is the maximum idle speed, which will give us the best mixture. Once that's done, then we need to adjust the throttle cables so that both carburetors engage at the same time. So let's start the bike, let it warm up again. Now let's do the other side. Let's do the idle speed here. Okay. And here's the mixture screw. we're just under 1,000 RPM, which is a fine idle speed. And of course you can't hear this, but the exhausts side to side seem pretty equal, which is what we want. So now let's see whether we can look at the throttle linkage. What that tells me that I don't think the carbs are coming on. See, I can do that. And that linkage doesn't move. What that means is that this cable needs to be adjusted. Oh, look at that. There's our problem. Okay, so we're going to lengthen this cable some. I'm going to get some tools, loosen this. That'll make both carburetors engage at the same time, and it'll make it a lot smoother. So to adjust this cable up, we're going to loosen this lock nut, which is a 10mm lock nut. And now we should be able to just screw this out. Still quite a bit of gap. And this cable is about done. We're going to be replacing the throttle cables at some point, but there we go. That's much better. Let's see if that makes a difference. Much better. Now it's time to go for a ride. All right, so we are just going to go see how this thing runs. It starts so easily. I would be shocked if it didn't run well once we get rolling, but there's second gear. Third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. Wow, it really runs nicely. So now that we have the bike up and running and we've got fresh fuel in it, I want to see how it runs, and we're just cruising along in fifth gear. What I want to see is, does this thing carburate smoothly at low throttle openings and at relatively low RPM? I mean, 2,500 RPM and 35 miles an hour is pretty low. That's really what tells you if the carbs are synced or not, and whether they're set up properly. You've got the idle mixture screw to adjust. You've got the size of the main and the primary jets, idle jets or pilot jets, however you want to call them. But if those are set up properly, man, this thing's just run really well. And we're about 4,500 feet. One of the things that I was concerned about is that it hadn't been jetted for this altitude. And I didn't know how I was going to run. If it's too lean, it may run fine down low, but as soon as you really get on it, then it'll kind of bog down and not run well. And this thing actually runs great. Man, even at low throttle openings and pulls, and just cruising along at 2,200 RPM, you can hardly tell that it's running. But one of the things that I was concerned about is, this is an older bike. It's older technology. Any two-cylinder motorcycle is going to have some vibration, and BMW, I guess, really knew what they were doing. This thing doesn't have. It had a little bit of vibration just off idle. But once you get it running, actually runs really well. I'm going to go ahead and just wind it out just a little bit. Right? The Salt Lake City Police Department uses BMW motorcycles and their R1200 RPs for police, and this is one of their favorite areas, so I'm going to be a little careful. But yeah, it just starts and goes and accelerates quite well. I'm really impressed. The other thing that I was really concerned about was the steering head bearings, and these bearings, as they age, get notchy and really makes it spooky handling right off of straight ahead. When you go to lean the bike in, there's just a little bit of resistance before the bars turn, and can be really spooky, especially if you have to ride in the rain. And this thing, left to right, has absolutely no indication that the steering head bearings are worn. That's another really good sign, because that's a huge pain in the butt. On this bike, it's not as bad as it is as it would be on a motorcycle with a fairing. But even so, I'd do it if I had to. I'm just really glad that I don't need to, apparently, because it runs back and forth with no effort. On most BMW motorcycles, especially the older ones, when you have it on the center stand, it lifts the front wheel off the ground. And so you can just, with your fingertip, pull the bars back and forth, and it's pretty apparent if the bearings are hammered or if they're loose. And this bike, when you put it up on the center stand, it still leaves both tires on the ground. Makes it really nice because you can just ride it right off the stand, but it does not give you that ability to do front end maintenance without jacking up the front. Let's run it again here. Yep, runs great. I think that was a Yamaha single. They made a couple of singles. I think the biggest one they made was a 650, and it looks like somebody had done a little bit of a cafe treatment to that bike. That's pretty fun to see those out running around today. Yeah, runs nicely. Boy, I tell you, when you buy the basket case, something that doesn't run, you never quite know what's going to happen, what you're going to find. I didn't know if the transmission worked, if the clutch actually still had any life left in it, or any of that stuff. And the wheels are true, in spite of the tires being absolutely hammered. We're going to fix that here shortly. But yeah, runs great. I'm running along at 40 miles an hour, fourth gear. It's smooth, it's quiet. I'm really liking it. So now we've got another list of things that we need to take care of. Next step is definitely going to be the tires. I wasn't going to mess with putting tires on it if I was just going to turn around and resell it, because tires are pretty personal. I was going to let the next guy worry about that. But I think as nice as this is, we're definitely going to want to ride it, so I am going to put tires on it. I've already got the tires, I just need to change them, and I have a Harbor Freight tire changer that I bought. So we're going to use that to put the new rubber on it, and that'll make it ride even better. So, thanks for watching. Please like, please share, please subscribe. Watch our other videos, because I do need the viewing hours. And we'll have another video out soon.